I'm Teisha with Shalom TV's news update for Tuesday, February the 18th, 2014. Two mortar shells originating from Syria landed in Israel's north this afternoon. The two shells are thought to be a result of spillover from the Syrian conflict. They exploded in the Golan Heights near the border fence separating Syria from Israel. No damage or injury was reported. Earlier today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited a field hospital in the Golan Heights run by the IDF for wounded Syrians. And with the second round of talks between world powers P5+1 and Iran taking place in Austria today, the Prime Minister said that it was important to see this place, meaning the field hospital, and show the true face of Iran in its armed funding of the Assad regime. Netanyahu said on the day that the world powers are opening talks in Vienna with Iran, it is important for the world to see pictures from this place. This place, he said, separates the good in the world from the evil in the world. The good, the Prime Minister said, was exemplified in Israel's saving lives from the ongoing slaughter in Syria, and the evil in Iran's arming and funding of the mass slaughter. Netanyahu said, "I want to say to the world with the renewal of the talks that Iran has not changed its aggressive policies, Iran has not changed its cruel character, Iran continues to support the Assad regime, which is slaughtering its citizens. This," Netanyahu said, "is the true face of Iran, and the world must not forget that." And Netanyahu made similar comments yesterday while addressing the annual Israel mission of the Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations, which is taking place in Israel this week. In addition to the Iranian threat and the situation in Syria, the Prime Minister spoke of the peace negotiations with the Palestinians and stated his support for U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry's efforts, and said it was now up to the Palestinians to see if they would be a true partner in the process. Netanyahu stressed that it was not the settlements or the territories that were the main obstacle to peace, but rather, he said, quote, "the root cause of this conflict is the refusal to accept the right of the Jewish people to a state of their own in any boundaries." Israel's Justice Minister Tzipi Livni addressed the mission today as well, where she discussed Kerry's upcoming framework plan for a peace deal between Israel and the Palestinians, and saying that while Israel may not be in love with the plan, it's something Israel can live with. The framework plan is expected to be presented by Kerry in April, with both sides already expressing concern and skepticism about its terms. Both the Palestinians and Israelis have expressed preconditions or red lines which they say they will not cross. The Israeli side, for example, has maintained that in any agreement, Israel must be recognized as a Jewish state. Israeli and Arab media reported last week that Abbas aide Nabil Abu Radene said that the Palestinians would absolutely not recognize Israel as a Jewish state, and that any framework deal must include East Jerusalem as the Palestinian capital, an Israeli withdrawal from all Palestinian territories within 4 years, and for the right of return of Palestinian refugees. And Israel's Foreign Minister Avigdor Lieberman also addressed the Conference of Presidents mission, telling the American Jewish leaders that it is the issue of Jewish continuity and not Iran or the Palestinian conflict which poses the biggest threat to the Jewish people. He said it must become the top priority on the global Jewish agenda. Lieberman said Jewish education was the answer to ensuring Jewish continuity. He noted that Jewish children are kept from Jewish schools because of the exorbitant costs, and that this was unacceptable. Lieberman also noted that most of the Israeli diplomats that he meets abroad send their children to the American or international schools and not to the Jewish schools because they said they are not as good. The foreign minister called for affordable Jewish education and for the creation of a global network of Jewish schools that would be considered among the best in the world. Lieberman said he believes the government of Israel should contribute $365 million, $1 million per day of the year, to this end, and that funds should ideally be matched by funds in the diaspora. Yesterday, U.S. Ambassador to Israel Dan Shapiro also spoke at the President's Conference mission, where he reiterated the U.S.'s support for a two-state solution between Israel and the Palestinians, and that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas were in a stronger position than past leaders to make this happen. At the same time, Shapiro recognized the process had its major challenges for both sides. The ambassador also addressed the BDS, or Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions movement, in his remarks and restated the U.S.'s opposition to the campaign, saying, quote, "We have opposed, do oppose, and will continue to oppose efforts to delegitimize or boycott Israel." House Majority Leader Eric Cantor urged the White House to ready additional sanctions against Iran should negotiations with the Islamic Republic fail. Cantor, who is Jewish, made the comments during a speech he gave yesterday to the Virginia Military Institute, where he also referred to a recent congressional delegation to the Auschwitz death camp, marking the 69th anniversary of the camp's liberation. Cantor said that evil still exists in the world. He said Hitler's rise and conquest of Europe did not come as a surprise. We must not repeat the same mistake by reducing our preparedness, accepting the notion that we are one of many, or ceding global leadership to others. The Jerusalem Post reports that Israel's President Shimon Peres received a medal today for fostering relations and dialogue with Germany after World War II. Peres is the first recipient of the Ernst Kramer Medal, which was presented to him today by President of the German-Israeli Society, Reinhold Robe. He was recognized as being one of the few Israelis who called for a dialogue between post-Nazi Germany and Israel over 50 years ago, and for his work in promoting friendship and diplomatic relations between Israel and Germany. The medal's namesake, Ernst Kramer, was imprisoned in the Buchenwald concentration camp in 1938. Kramer fled to America in 1939 and returned to Germany in 1945 as an American soldier. He later became a leading figure in reconciliation efforts between Germany and Israel. The Simon Wiesenthal Center led a protest against an ultra-nationalist neo-Nazi march in Lithuania in honor of Lithuanian Independence Day. Israel director of the Wiesenthal Center and chief Nazi hunter Dr. Ephraim Zurov led the protest in Kaunas, the large Jewish community in the country that was nearly wiped out completely during the Holocaust, protesting the right-wing demonstrators who marched with images of Juozas Abreveshinis Brazaitis, who was prime minister of the Lithuanian provisional government in the area after the Nazi invasion and supported the Nazi activity. Zurov said those who seek to inspire patriotism by invoking the memory of Abreveshis Brazaitis are in effect expressing support for the tragic annihilation of Lithuanian Jewry. In that context, he said the shouts of the demonstrators, "Lithuania for Lithuanians," rings starkly ominous. Zurov called on the government of Lithuania to condemn the Nazi support march and to do more. The Mandel Foundation has awarded over $13 million to Israel's Ben-Gurion University of the Negev. The school announced today that the gift includes funds to build the Jack Joseph and Morton Mandel Institute for Social Leadership and create the Jack Joseph and Morton Mandel Honors Program in that field. The Social Leadership Program will teach business and management students business administration, social responsibility, and social leadership skills. Foundation Chairman and CEO Morton Mandel said the funding was another expression of the Foundation's ongoing support of Ben-Gurion, as well as of the city of Beersheba and the advancement of social leadership in Israel. And turning to our Shalom TV programming for tonight, Tuesday, February the 18th, at 8 o'clock, Syrian native Muhammad al-Siyadi discusses the complexities of Syria at war on Inside the Syrian Conflict. And then at 9 o'clock, Egyptian activist Dalia Ziada joins Mark Golub on L'Chaim, where she talks about what it was like to be in Tahrir Square during the Arab Spring and shares her feelings about Israel and the Jewish people. That's tonight on Shalom TV and ShalomTV.com. And that's Shalom TV's news update for Tuesday, February the 18th, 2014. I'm Teisha Bader.